Okay, we have the Town Hall Building Committee, full committee, December 6, 2022, and it's about 10 after 7 p.m. We'll do roll call. I'll say your first name, say your full name in here, please. Mark,
Mark Cameron here.
Wayne,
Wayne Sawchuck here.
Kurt,
Garrett Lubitz here.
and Phil Lear here. All right, on the agenda, we're talking about the construction management manager timeline update. We have some estimating to talk about, design modifications if there are any, and some of the other timeline tasks leading up to the town meeting. Just to bring you up to where we are now, we did have a subcommittee and we worked on the timeline moving forward from this point, just this last week, up till the town meeting in spring in May. And we worked on a schedule to present to the select board. We presented that to the select board last Tuesday on the 29th of November. And they were very receptive and they voted 5-0 in favor of accepting our schedule and moving forward. So that gives us the go-ahead to work to hire and move forward with the construction management. So I think I'll let John take over here and then we can ask questions at the end as we move along. John, you want to bring us up to speed on that?
Sure. So I'm going to share here. This is the schedule, the final version that I worked on with back and forth with Mark a little bit and Michelle on the RFP phase or the CM at risk process. So as of right now, we have a total of, one second. So right now we're kind of in between. We're right here. So we have set out and received responses from CMs. We've got 3. Colantonio, Commodore, and Delbrook J.K. Scanlon. All 3 of those, it looks like we will be qualifying. We're in the process of officially finalizing that information. But as I said to the subcommittee the other day, I mean, it looks like we're going to be, we're going to be right there. All 3 of them we have experience with. They're all good firms. State law requires that you pre-qualify at least 3. If not, you have to go back out. It's easy. We're going to qualify the 3. There's no guarantee that when we tell them we're submitting the RFP, asking them to submit an RFP response request for proposal, whether they'll all respond, but you have to, we got them not long ago. You got to assume, barring some award of a big project, they will respond to the RFP. This week, in the process of putting that RFP together, that RFP will be include links after we send it out, to the most recent drawings as they stand. The directions that will be given to them will be, you're going to do 2 phases of work for us. You're going to do pre-construction, and then you're going to, after pre-construction, and pre-construction is going to include basically some manner, bidding this project. So, we're basically saying in this pre-construction phase, you're going to do an estimate. You're going to help us with any VE if you see, items that you might see when, as you go through the drawings to do that estimate. And then, in the end, we're going to bid and try to buy out this project in time for May, May town meeting. At this point, this schedule shows all of that at the end of April, but my understanding is that town meeting is probably more going to be along the lines of May 1st or May 8th, which would again move the blue and brown stars out to the right a little bit. In the RFP, we're going to ask them, they're going to provide to us, costs for their, well, let me back up. So you fill your next comment about the estimate. So they're going to give us an estimate, and that estimate is this one right here. Okay, bid document estimate or current construction document estimate by the CM. So that's going to be our gut check. Okay, probably isn't going to happen at this time frame. All of these things are going to slide to the right a tiny bit. Just given the, this was aggressive to begin with. Then we went to the town, had the meeting, probably should have moved it already a little bit more to the right, but assuming that these two things slide down to the right a little, all of these boxes can slide a little bit. That CM estimate is going to be our gut check to see, okay, are we still at the 18-ish, 19-ish million that we were at before? If the answer is no, okay, that's why we have the CM. Let's ask them for ideas that we could, that are easily attainable, short of, large redesign, because obviously redesign comes with added costs as well, that we could, fund, that we would build into the drawing so that when they go out to bid down here in the blue section, those drawings reflect, the best case scenario to get us, within the budget, okay, barring any, crazy spike that we've seen. Prior to bidding, we're going to have to, and this is the green section here, pre-qualify all of the subs. All the subs that are going to work on the job as trade bidders. Fancy name for what under the GC bidding we call filed sub bids. So mechanical, electrical, plumbing, masonry, roofing, all of those trades have to be pre-qualified to bid on the project, and then the CM takes from that pool, the lowest qualified, responsible and responsive bidder. They also bid all of the non-trades as well. They bid excavation, they bid drywall, all of the things that are, we'll call them private bids, just as to kind of differentiate. Those are the trade bidders are, if it's in the plans and specs, that's what you get. Traditional, if it's not in the electrical plans, the electrician doesn't own it. It's the CM's job to try to make sure that all of the other holes are filled in. So if there's something that the electrician doesn't own, who owns it? Okay, if no one owns it, they have to buy it out. In a GC world, you would only ever get to see the numbers for this section up here, this trade bid section. But because we're doing CM at risk, we get to see it not just for that, but we get to see it for this section as well. And see all those numbers, understand the buyout, and in that case, watch our guaranteed maximum price, watch our bid get constructed, okay, is in parts along the way. And by the end of that process, they develop what's called the guaranteed maximum price, which is essentially the construction line item on the budget sheet that we've been doing. So we're proving out that number that has just been an estimate to date. Again, we're going to check that estimate. We're going to start with a, basically we're going to start with it up here, make sure we're still in the ballpark. But in the end, we're going to build into the project budget the actual number, okay? But that's going to come right before town meeting. So I know Michelle was going to ask at town hall, we'll be able to give them a budget number to kind of fill in the blank and be able to go to, the select board and update them and tell them where it is, based largely on the, what we do in the first few weeks of January with the estimate with the CM on board. But you won't have the actual final number until right before town meeting. So it's the only, it would be virtually impossible to get a bid number, if we needed it a month before the town meeting to get it in March, it's almost impossible to do that right now with this timeline. And we told the select board that, like, this is kind of what we need to do. Any amount of float we have would come out of this gray bar in the middle, and that's the value of having the CM. That's the drawing review, the feedback back and forth. So if we compress the schedule at all to try to do it sooner, it would come at the expense of the value of getting the CM on board early. And then, at the end of this process, as we're going out to build the GMP, we would also be advertising for the town for the temporary facilities. That's this line down here. And, we would then contract with them, knowing that we had an approved vote. So you get some RFPs, what's an acceptable space for the town. We go ahead and identify that, we get a price for that. We would have the price in hand for town meeting as well. Again, these bars will move around a little bit, but we need to know, how much square footage and where and for how long. work all of that out. So that price also gets built into this, the final town meeting number. And then once the project, once town meeting passes, funds are available, then we've got what we're calling the procurement period, this brown bar. And as you all know, we've talked about, long lead times. You've talked about difficulty in getting some types of materials. What we're doing on a lot of our projects now is giving the builder a chance to get on board, get their feet wet, not go on site. So to basically do work from the office. So basically a reduced general conditions number that bridges them from contracting to actual boots on the ground. And that would be, in this case, we're looking at like 2.5 months, so that when they hit the ground, they've already got, basically 10 weeks of procurement under their belt. And most importantly, the town has had a chance to get their stuff together and move, so that by the time the contractor is ready to get on site, the town has vacated and moved to the temporary site. So I think, Phil, that's an awful lot of your agenda items, kind of all in one, one swoop there. So I'll stop for a second and see if there's any questions. Phil, you're on mute.
Success.
Wayne or Gert, seeing this for the first time, any comments?
I'm just concerned. There are things that we have not decided on. And I don't know whether that's going to be something that we go, because when I see that the architect is 100% done, I'm saying to myself, I don't think so. And so that's a concern I have. A positive thing, and something that for us to think about, because I inquired of Mr. Stasko, was whether or not in the resident they're building up there, he said that he'd be willing to build out a temporary town hall, and how that process starts in terms of bidding and everything else. But there is an alternative to have space built for us for the time that the work is going on, without having to have places all over town. That everything that we looked at before was sort of standard, and it didn't have an elevator, it didn't have this, it didn't have that, and it will only hold this many people, and that many people. He has a vacant, not built out, 40,000 square feet or so space that he, when a conversation with me, said, I'd be happy to, petition this out. We'll give you, 4 walls around it. You people put carpet down, and this is the price that I'd want for it. And I'd want a 1-year deal or whatever. And I think something like that should be looked at.
So, couple things, Wayne. So you brought up a very good point. I think it's a point of clarification. Just to be clear, the drawings that are going to go to the CM for the estimate aren't complete. We know that. And the drawings don't need to be complete until March, when they go out to bid to the subs. So any comments, thoughts, like, and Phil will talk in a little bit about what they've done since we had that meeting, and then what still needs to be done. The point, though, is we have drawings that are, let's say, at 90+% complete. That's a good percentage to give to the estimator and say, go to work, do a good job, tell us what you have. And again, some of them may dig into it even without getting the job. You'll be surprised when we interview these guys. It would not shock me if at least one of them comes to the meeting with an estimate done already, to kind of show their commitment, to order of magnitude of what this thing is. But I think that's a good point. The point about the temp space, advertising and procurement of real estate is a different, it's a different animal. There's an RFP phase. We will get into that. We do it sometimes, But that we're gonna have to work with town hall, but I think whatever opportunities there are, including a build out, including somebody, you know, I don't think we can just go to one person, but they can certainly respond. And then I'm not sure the comparative criteria of what's the most advantageous, you know, to the town. You get a number from somebody for 200 grand. Yeah, you got to put $1 million into it to make it up, to bring it up standard, or you get a bid for somebody at 600, but they only need 100,000 worth of work, you know, higher bid up front, but less cost to get it ready. So I think that we're going to have to work on that RFP piece of this kind of concurrently once we get the CM out the door. I do, again, the drawings, I think the drawings, you know, we're going to, you know, I told Natalie when we were on the call the other day, I'm going to press print for wherever those are. They're going to give us a link. I'm going to give those drawings to the CM so they see where we are. Phil's going to talk in a little bit too. You know, we had some discussions, Mark and I, about the, you know, the historic gathering space. You know, what is it? What could it be? What else should we be doing? And if there's things that need to be added to that scope, there's time for that. And that stuff doesn't have to be in the estimate that they jump right in and do. So point is you still have time. You still have time to make some changes. Again, changes at the end are more expensive the longer you wait, but adding scope to an open room like the, you know, the assembly area, you know, sound panels on the wall or lights, adding that kind of scope is easy compared to moving walls and changing partitioning, you know, and changing the structure inside, you know, to you know, move load bearing walls. We're not talking about that. So adding scope for the historic building, I think, is still for discussion. There's still a piece, that whole piece needs to be kind of run to ground, and how it impacts with TPC, with Cohasset Historical. Like there's some work to be done there. And that's, you know, kind of a, that's basically now work. So we had talked to Phil, and you know, I'll say it again when he jumps back on, but I had asked him, I had said, give us some thoughts, you know, about that room and that space. I mean, Mark, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add, you know, add to that, but I did prep Phil to, you know, Phil Johnson Roberts to know that, you know, that's some stuff, that's an area that we might, you know, want to look at, you know, some augmentation.
That's, you know, and it's a really important part of the job, because we had an event for Christmas sales and stuff from the churches and everything, and the town hall was used as one of the places that were had gifts and different things like that. And the number of comments that I heard about the condition of the space, and one person even thought it was the church next door. That, and I said, oh God, I don't want to hear that. So that is a portion of the project that will also give people that use it and you know, a good possibility of putting their you know, the approval rating for the whole project up, because we are taking care of that. In other words, we're not.
And it's a good point. I've used the job in Westboro as an example before. We had a job that was 46, 46, 46. It has to be 46, the whole project budget. This was a school. And we said, well, some people said, well, we need to make it geothermal. Well, it's going to make it 50 million. We don't care. And increasing the price of the project made it more attractive to more people to say yes. So it's counterintuitive, but I you know, I hear your point. You know, if by doing a little more in that space endears it to more people, hey, that's a success. So Phil, he just texted me. His computer crashed completely, so he's working to try to figure another way to get back on. So anyway, any other questions on the CM? So the CM at risk piece will continue to move. The contract that we suggest for the CM, the general conditions, that has been forwarded to town council by Michelle. So that process is ongoing. The RFP, you know, kind of, we'll have that done, and there's Philly's back. done, I'm on vacation next week, so I am trying like hell to have it done this week. So it can go out to those guys, to those 3 firms. So, Phil, I don't have the agenda in front of me. There's a spot for Phil O'Brien to speak in a bit, right?
You can speak right now if you want.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Phil, Phil's like, what are we talking about? We were just talking about we talked about the CM, Phil, and that, basically when the CM gets on board, we're going to send them a set of drawings as they are right now.
Yep.
Acknowledging that, the drawings don't have to be done until, let's say, the 1st of March, because that's when bidding will essentially start. Maybe a little bit before that, probably, maybe a little bit back, maybe the middle end of February to be safe. But bottom line is there's time between now and then to, obviously address any comments that the town has, address any comments that the CM may have, but also,
Sure.
as we talked about a little bit last week, kind of the, if there's the feeling that the community space and the historic town hall has kind of been, there's not enough scope there, to bring it back. This is the time to kind of talk about that, get it on the table. So I had told the group as you crashed out that this was something that we talked briefly about, to try to come up with some ideas of what are some things we could do to that space to make it a little bit more community functional. We talked about, I didn't give anybody the update on the acoustics that it sounds like, you talk to them and we don't have to spend the money to acoustic. They gave you the ideas, they gave you the details. So that's
Right.
good. Why don't you I'll let you jump in, kind of give an update on the state of the drawings and, what's next. What do you still need answers from, from this group?
Okay. Okay, I'll try to touch on all those things. If I miss anything, you can remind me and I'll jump back. But the status of the documents right now, John may have mentioned to you, the plan is at the end of this week, we're going to send you a set. That set will probably call something like a 95% final review set or something like that. And we understand that that's what's going to be sent to the CM so they can take a look. And then they'll probably be using that to do their estimate toward the end of the year, and which shows in blue on John's schedule there. So 95%, I think, is probably a pretty accurate kind of description of where we are. It might actually be a little bit further than that. Specifications at this point are basically completed for us and for all of our consultants. What is missing is really some front end information, and that is a bunch of small stuff like what the bid dates are going to be, the wage rates and stuff like that, that really won't happen until we nail down what all the bid dates and everything are going to be, and then how we're going to distribute the documents. It's kind of minutia, that kind of stuff. The other thing that I think is probably the biggest impact in the specification is probably the general conditions and the owner contractor agreement that the town has sent us. We included that in our draft front end a little
Yep.
while ago. I think it's based on the window replacement you did. I don't think it's really going to work
No.
for CM.
So thank you. No, that was the other update you didn't hear. We have a GCs and a CM at risk agreement. Both have been sent to town council and are under review as we speak at KP. So we're in good shape with that agreement. So my plan is to send out the RFP, and I will have to update the 3 candidates with an addendum that includes that as soon as we hear from council. So you can take that right out of the,
Just remove it. Okay.
just remove it. Yeah, because we have one we've used on multiple CM at risk projects right now. It's kind of a template that gets passed around, and I've seen it from various places, and at the end of the day, it looks different. Then when you read it, it says the same thing. It's almost like somebody generated this thing a few years ago, and it just gets recirculated. So, and different councils, tweak different things on it, but I'm fairly confident that it will go through pretty easily. It's probably 30 something pages of GCs, and it's about a 12, 14 page agreement, something like that.
Okay. All right, that was my biggest issue on the specification. Otherwise, that's pretty much ready to go, and I'd be happy for folks to let us know what any comments that you may have, and we'll get that included. The drawings from mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection are in. Drawings from civil are in. Landscape is in. The outstanding ones are structural, and we are still doing kind of our final coordination. We'll have a package for you with everything in it on Friday, as Natalie has agreed to with John in our conversation. I think it was last week. So we're on schedule for that. We expect that there'll be some things that folks will say, hey, what happened to this or that, and we'll certainly cover those things. And I think we have time to do that, kind of built into the schedule the way that John is showing it. Now, this has been explained to me, as it's probably been to you a couple of times, but this is the first time I'm seeing it all kind of laid out in front of me. And when I look at it, it seems very doable. I'm assuming you all talked when I crashed out about what these little arrows and movement things mean.
Yeah. So I just what I said when this went to the select board, this was, an attempt to kind of graphically put this down. And the more time we've had to think about it, and I got some input from a CM, just like in general. And the thought would be, that we probably want to start bidding it a little sooner. So
Okay.
obviously what happens on this drawing, I'm just trying to show the blue bars starting sooner and the estimate ending a little later, which squeezes the opportunity for VE, but ultimately it's only, it's, I think at the end of the day, we'll be open, as what I said was that changes at this point are hard and expensive. So we're looking for kind of high level options and ideas that don't require a redesign. So,
Okay.
So again, the only float we have is kind of the gray bar. And as you can see, I've just taken 3.5 weeks off of it, kind of.
Yeah, that's my bar, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thing that's not on here yet is this was predicated on a town meeting at like the 3rd week of April.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
that's now going to be either the 1st or the 8th. And obviously a vote would follow after that. That's 2 weeks to the right that all of this stuff can slide. So even though I'm showing increased durations for bidding, I think ultimately the start dates may be the same. Again, this is just working notes for me right now,
Sure.
but that's I think, I think we will have time. We will be able to do this, but it's go time. It's go on all of this.
Okay. So
one question in terms of timing, how are we going to review these drawings in a timely fashion for us as the committee here with the design group? Because essentially we don't have the drawings, they're not done yet. The bar shows that the drawings being complete last week. And as we're approaching this, we're planning to see them towards the end of this week, but you mentioned some packages that aren't even going to be complete by the end of this week.
Oh, they will. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, you'll have everything by the end of the week.
So it just feels that we're getting constrained even tighter as we approach the holidays here and really getting a chance to review them. We haven't really had a chance to go through them since our last set of comments here. We didn't fully get through those last time. So again, with the holidays coming up and the timeline of the CM, how do we anticipate being able to navigate through the drawings as a group and incorporating any comments that we see still needing attention?
Well, it's been my experience that we all can continue working as a group. There's kind of a gap between the end of this week and the 2nd week of January here, or I guess maybe it's the 3rd week of January now, where we'd start the VE process there. But I don't see any reason why we couldn't, holidays accepted, I guess, of course, continue on and work through that time period so that when we get to the VE, the third week of January, and we begin to pick some of these things up again, we can have some of these things included in that as well. So
Yeah, I guess I was
no-
trying to capture them before they went to the CM for the estimate.
I think that's going to be kind of a moving target a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think that's an issue, Mark, because I think, if we tell them it's a 95, they're going to include a small amount of design and pricing contingency in there inside the number, not part of the CM contingency, to make up for that 5%. So, it would be more to me, like, so for those things that aren't finished, those things that there's a miss, a bang up, a situation that just hasn't been resolved yet, I think gets covered in there. What won't be in the estimate is things that get talked about and added about the renovation scope. So that'll be, so like, let's say at a certain point, we go through this and, over the next month and a half, someone says, you know what, we should include, new hanging lights in the auditorium space. We should refinish the floors. And, we've got to add things for acoustical tiles on the ceilings or the walls. Like, that's something that we can go ahead and tell the estimator, the CM, separately and say, hey, we've got these 6 new details. Give us a number to carry for this, and we'll be able to capture that. I think in no situation would, had we gotten the CM sooner, their first look at the drawings would have been the 60s. Nothing's captured at that point. You know what I mean? The fact that we're at 95, I don't think it's going to impact the review of the CM. It may in fact help weed out any other issues too. I fully expect them to look at these things and go, hey, there's a dotted line missing here, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So it's going to help us with that. I think so. There's 2 categories of stuff here. There's those kind of things, and then there's also the finish the scope, complete the scope. What does the town want for some of those other items, which, and again, I'm going to update this and I'll share it with you, Mark, because this is the kind of document that's going to the CMs. So they know what they're, bidding and kind of pricing for durations. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, like, I'll just use the subject of the grading and the walkway area. We haven't closed that conversation. So to us, it's still an unknown. We don't know what's happening. So I presume that the documents have what we saw the last time. I don't know any different, any information, to reflect anything different than what we've seen in the past. But as has been shared in the meetings before, there's been some concern about the handicap parking spaces, the retaining walls, and all that out front. So as we should close that loop before we're really, because that's a sizable change. That's not just some lighting and some acoustical panels. There's some stuff that's a little bit more robust there that, in my mind, we should have sorted out before the CMs are really going to price it because of the magnitude of it.
So quick note too. So just because I said someone may put an estimate to this, no one's under contract to estimate it until we get back from the new year, probably. So what I would suggest is those items we should be talking about and addressing after Friday. In the next 2 weeks before the holidays, take a look at those site civils and let's meet and talk about those. So to the extent that, we have to close the discussion on that, let's see what's the final, let's see what the 95s for civil say and show, and let's continue that conversation. Even though we're going to give it to them, it's okay if they change. We're giving it to them so that they can understand their approach to the project. If the outside details for civil change, that's okay. It's going to change, and even though it might be a significant change, they're not truly supposed to be bidding, pricing this right now. This is more so that we can, they can give us a technical proposal in their response to say, here's how we're going to build a job. Whether we do curbing and a retaining wall or not, they don't care. That's not going to change the quality of the response. but I do think.
No,
from
I
a-
understand that. It's more of what's reflected in the estimate.
Sure. I think
Right,
one of the
right.
things-
So I
You know,
agree
and it's
with you.
just,
I
again,
agree
it's a
with you. We
subject
should
we've
get
been-
that answered before they do the estimate. Yes.
And it's something we've been talking about for a long time too. So that's where the concern comes in, because it's been talked about.
Mark, I really appreciate that, these comments, because I've gone down with all kinds of different things and seen that the grades were changed, and probably the grades that they might be working on an old plan in some of the road work that was done. And I think that it's very important to include a portion of the road in this whole design, because it handles the in and out of the parking lot where handicap places are going to be, and it's going to make some decisions on the front entrance that are actually looked at in the field and come up with a good workable solution. One other thing is, who makes the decision whether or not we're going to have a whole building generator or perhaps a smaller generator in this project? Because I'm hearing people say, the lead time is 18 months. It's going to cost $250,000 for this. It's going to be this and this. And I'm saying to myself, I'm under the impression that this building does not need a full generator. There are other things that in other words, who's making the decision on that? Is it the fire chief? Is it the plumber? Is it the town manager? Who's making that decision that we're putting in these apps?
So just in the generator conversation, I mean, this is a view here, and I don't know maybe we could have our electrical engineer weigh in on this, but if we were to design the building for a generator backup one way or another, excuse me, would it be possible to have a different size generator as an ad alternate? That way it's not changing the whole lighting, it's not changing the way the building is built and wired. It's just in terms of capacity. There's some people in town think that we should have a smaller generator for the building. Some people in town that think we should have a larger generator for the building. Chances are the price of the project is going to be higher than most people want anyway, no matter what we tell them. So if, again, it's not the committee's view here, but my view would be to engage the select board as a higher body here of how they want to run this town, and engage the town manager to how this town is going to run and operate. Because there's no sense in putting in a large scale generator if, when we lose power for 3 days, nobody's coming to town hall anyway to work.
And it's not being used as a warming center or anything like that.
Because it is not used as a warming center. Wilcott
Right.
is used as a warming center and a cooling center. So, again, that's where I think it kind of gets outside the boundaries of us as a committee, because we're not the committee, we're not the people running this town, especially in an emergency situation. And I think it's important for us to talk with those groups that do run this town in an emergency situation and figure out how they want to plan for the future. I just don't think I think if we design it with a generator capabilities in terms of code and lighting perspectives and life safety, I think that's probably the way to go, and keep some minimal things on there so that town, if someone needs to come in for town functions, they can. And if there's other bodies involved that want to and say we need a larger generator to power the whole building so that every worker can come in during an outage, then that's a different conversation that I think is not for us to decide.
Phil,
like
what do
the-
you have? What's the drawing have right now, Phil O'Brien, for generator and backup?
I believe it is a generator that powers the whole building, and I believe that was based on a request from the select board. We had originally suggested a smaller generator. we can change it. Those two examples that were brought up about the regrading and the parking and the generator question, those are perfect questions, I think, for CM. They could tell you pretty quickly what the differences would be. They could also advise you whether or not they would recommend trying to do it as an alternate. I can talk to GGD as well about trying to do a smaller generator as an alternate. My guess is that they would recommend against it because of the complexity and the overlap. I think you're going to get wild numbers. The emergency power riser diagram is going to look completely different when one versus the other. And your emergency power panels and your transfer switch is going to be servicing two completely different things, and those both need to be engineered separately. And when somebody tries to price both of those things, I think you're going to get crazy numbers. I think that's what they'll.
Bill, I think one of the best things to do is to provide a hitching post and a manual transfer switch on the whole building, instead of having an auto transfer switch, which is a lot more money, and a full-time generator, whereby we can go out and lease a generator if there was something that the building needed that required an outage to be able to fix. The main panel will, all right, well, I need something to buy something. But and
You can
then come, today the life stuff has to be in a separate electric room, and it has to have a separate feed, and on a generator it has to have a separate breaker coming on the generator. So usually that's going to happen automatically, and the other thing is just the rest of the building would be on a second generator or a backup if you needed it. It's just that it's not a generator, it's the maintenance of it, it's everything else about it.
Sure.
But we can lose power here at a moment's notice, even in good weather. How do we experience, we're very fragile in our electricity here. We all know that. And it doesn't seem like it's going to get any better based on the conversations that have been existing, that I've heard of. Is that this isn't a simple fix for us as a town. So if we lose power, for any reason, it's usually not with a lot of notice. And if we do have a storm coming, Murphy's Law will prevail that if we get the generator, we'll never lose power. If we don't get the generator, we will lose power. So how do we manage that from a town entity and taxing our staff at town hall in an emergency situation that they got to get the generator here from a rental company or somewhere else or something that we own, and it's got to be brought over and hooked up for the what if?
You don't do
It
that.
I
seems
think we
like a
need to
lot-
know the
It
cost.
just seems like a
We need
lot
to
of
know the cost, right? We need to know the differential cost. I mean, one of the things I also want to think about is that if we're talking about the difference between doing a whole building generator or just doing specific zones, one of the things that we've been touting about this project is that we are designing a facility that is adaptable, right? So that if we want to change the needs, the purpose in the future based off of the needs of the town, that we can do so. If we're designing a generator that basically is only going to power certain portions of the building, are we locking ourselves into keeping those portions of the building used in their current purpose, right? If we need to have a generator in a certain part of the building, we're going to have to change the electrical systems at some point. I don't know. I just want to make sure that we understand what the costs are. And I don't want to make decisions that, sound good on paper that are, to use the phrase again, like penny wise, pound foolish. If it's an extra $50,000 to put in a generator for the entire building, and I don't know that that's the number, but if it is, it seems to me that that might be sort of a good number, a good amount of money to spend today, rather than dealing with trying to jerry rig something in the future, that, trying to accomplish something that could have been done much easier today or in the next couple of years. And we find ourselves hamstrung by a decision that was made by this committee, not, really envisioning the needs of the town 10 years from now.
I would write a check if it was $50,000. It's going to be 200 or more because of the electric.
Yeah, but it's not a 200. It's not a zero sum. I mean, a generator itself is a 250 kW generator that would power that whole entire building is 250 grand. And you, obviously if you're not buying any generator, you're buying more expensive light fixtures that have battery backup. If you're buying a smaller generator, you're buying a generator at less than $250,000. But if you're doing a manual situation with a rental generator, you still have costs. You have long-term costs of bringing it in and potentially bringing it in and not even using it. So there's still costs there. It's not a zero-sum game.
Well, we have half a dozen generators, 4 of them on that sit all the time. And maybe we should look to take something that we have and have a permanent backup. Anyway, we'll get over that.
Okay.
No, but to Wayne's point, I guess is, this is something that we keep all talking about, and that the select board at one point made a call. Is this something we want to go back to the select board with? Or
I don't think we should go back to the select board until we have any kind of rough order of magnitude numbers. So
Yeah.
let's get the CM on board and let's have the conversation with them. But to sit here and
Yeah.
fire
No,
off
that's-
numbers here,
that's fair.
is probably not the most effective use of all of our time.
Yeah, I guess it would be helpful to understand what that ask is based off of, right? So is there some perception that we need to keep like the Cohasset 143 studios fully powered at all times, that we could make emergency broadcasts to the town? I don't know, right? So what do we actually need this generator to do? And to understand those requirements, I think that would help us to understand the scope of the issue that we're trying to deal with.
Well, I think the suggestion to put this on the CM to bring it forward to us is probably the wisest. He's going to have the numbers, or they're going to have the numbers to show us. And it's also going to know how the electrical system is going to work with one or the other, and that whole cost comparison. So
I think
it's the direction rather than us trying to figure it out.
Phil, Phil O'Brien, that is, if we could get GGD to help us from a theoretical scope perspective of, call it small, medium, and large options here. The one option would be no generator, which has battery backup, because if we're hooking up a manual generator, we have to treat the building from a life safety perspective that it has no generator. It has to have emergency battery backup, emergency lighting. So that would be option one. Go through that, including, rough order of magnitude of risers, closets, all that's, whatever is required in this size building. If emergency has to be in a separate panel or in a separate room or separate, or however that needs to function. And then moving up next to a partial building generator and a full building generator, and kind of be able to put a rough scope so that maybe the CM could then take that information, that narrative, if you will, and put some dollars to it.
Okay, I think we did that in preparation of the selectmen's meeting, but we might be able to flesh it out a little bit so that the CM could use it for pricing.
Okay. Thank you.
So I think it's great to hear that the CD95s will be Friday. I think it's important that we, to your point, we know that Mark, to your point, the holidays are coming, but we've still got a couple of good weeks before we lose a week and a half. So I think, we get those drawings, there should be, take a few days to go through them, and then there should, let's look and see what that site stuff says, to Phil O'Brien's point, the CM on board, okay, what's the option? What's the other option that's being talked about? What could that mean? That is a great discussion to have with them. What do you think? What do you see? What are the challenges? What would you do? I think that can certainly be, part of some of the early early discussions with them right when they get on board. Don't have to wait to price that, you know, they don't have to, they can be in the middle of the estimating process and still start to give us, you know, feedback. That's, you know, that's okay. Phil, what else?
I just had a couple of notes here. I wanted to ask Phil, not to get into nitty gritty, but we'll have some of this when we get the plans, but what about the tech stuff, like the microphones and cameras, all that wiring stuff for meeting rooms and the old town hall and stuff? How do we,
Sure.
what do we look at there and where do we see it?
We typically would allow for the most part for equipment to be purchased by you all under a separate line item, and I think the project budget shows that. And so you'd be buying your own phone systems and modems and computers and things like that. Typically, we would also suggest that you buy your own cameras, and if you're going to have a you know, security system, if you're going to all of that stuff, you're better off waiting. Technology changes really, really quickly. And somebody who's going to be installing that is going to be a sub to your CM, and everybody is going to put a multiplier, a markup on it. And if you can get it directly, if you won't have to buy things out or specify things that are specified now and that you aren't really going to buy or need for another 18 months, it allows you to get the most up-to-date equipment and do it directly off the state bid list. So we would typically recommend that you're buying all your equipment and so forth from them. That said, that would typically, for things like security and cameras and stuff like that, include the wiring systems. We'll provide in the documents places for all those things. And then once you work out, it'll give you an opportunity. You'll be able to walk through the building. You'll be able to see all these things with your vendor as the building is beginning to kind of finish up. And you'll be able to decide, okay, now we've got 12 different locations for security cameras, for example, where we're showing a work box and a conduit and a pull string, and we're going to put cameras on 6 of those. And so you only have to pay for the wiring and the cameras for 6 of those instead of pulling wire in all of them. So for stuff like that, we would typically leave the wiring out. With your telephone systems and computer systems inside the building, we'll have Cat 6, Cat 6E, all pulled out throughout the entire building and then terminated. So when you bring in your phones and your computers, you'll just be able to plug them into the wall. What's going to be, and it'll all be punched down back on racks in the server room in the basement. All the racks and wires will be there. There'll be patch panels. There'll be patch cables. What won't be there is your switch, your modem, your servers, all that stuff. You'll put all that in, and all the patch cables will be there. You just plug them in and they're ready to go. So that's the kind of level of technology that we've discussed in the past, and that's what you'll see on the documents when you take a peek at them.
Okay,
Phil,
great. So
Phil,
basically,
we had them broken out on the budget, Phil. We had outside of construction, we had, you know,
Golf course.
IT, AV, security, FF&E. So we've got buckets of money in there, but as we move closer to town meeting, and now that these drawings are approaching, you know, completion, to Phil's point, it's to make sure that, you know, we go through it with them and say, okay, you've got this, we have that. We have this, you have that, so that to make sure that we have it either captured in the construction number, or we have a budget line item to buy it outside of the, you know, to his point, the bid list and the bid list later.
So you mentioned like your meeting rooms, for example. So your meeting rooms will all have outlets on the wall where you could mount a television. So we're not providing the television, but the outlet will be there, and you'll be able to wire it whatever you want. I mean, if you wanted to plug in a laptop at a lectern and use an HDMI, that'll all be wired up to the back of the television, so there aren't cords laying around on the floor. And you can mount the TV right on the wall. That'll happen for all of your spaces. We're not mounting a TV in your auditorium because there's really no good way to do that, and you need a really big television.
big walls,
And a wall to hang it on, right?
yeah, really big walls.
Really big walls to put a television like that on. So that's the kind of technology we'll have in each of your meeting rooms. In your large meeting room, we will have a sound system and an amplifier. The room is large enough that we need to have sound listening, assisted listening devices, and those are wireless. And we would typically buy some of that equipment, which is kind of the exception to the rule. So there'll be some microphones, an amplifier, and your assisted listening system can plug right into that. There'll be speakers in there. Now, these speakers are really for voice. And if you decided that, for example, you wanted to put in a sound system for music, the voice speakers that we're specifying aren't going to do it. And so one of the things that John asked me is if we could kind of think a little bit more about what you might want to do if you wanted to improve the capabilities of your large meeting room. And really what the differences are there from the kind of construction point of view is kind of one little package of stuff. And then what I think is probably a larger area of improvement is probably your furnishings, fixtures, and equipment that might go into that room that might really improve it. And those don't really need to be decided now, other than we probably would need to make some provisions for it so that we made sure that we had enough power and so forth to get those things in. So if you wanted to make your space more theater-like and improve your lighting, improve your sound system for music, improve things like your stage curtains or replace your stage curtains, things like that, to give yourself more flexibility. You wanted to redo your rigging and things like that. Those, for the most part, I think probably should happen at a later date rather than as part of this system now. And we just provide the power so that you have that, so that you have the flexibility to be able to bring somebody in, like a theater consultant that could help you with that stuff. So the things that you might do now, we are planning on doing acoustics in the ceiling. We think it's, given the historic quality of the space, we think it's the most, we think it's the softest approach and the one that will have the least impact on the way that the overall space feels and give you for the best benefit. And that is to hang acoustical ceiling panels in the center portion of the ceiling, kind of inside the trim. And that I think is really going to help with your acoustics based on what we heard from Ascentech. And we have that information and we're including that in the documents. We are replacing, relamping all the lighting in that room right now. We could also change the lights if you wanted to. I think an historic style fixture would probably be the way to go. We could put in larger fixtures and give you a little bit more flexibility. We could add some controllability to the lighting to give you some more control. If a larger fixture would allow us to put a number of lamps in it, for example, and you can control them all independently, and some of them could be on, some of them could be off, and they all could be dimmable, and they could be a lighting control system that would have a series of presets where you could press the button depending on, and they could be labeled music concert, speech, a play, and house lights up or house lights down, and all that stuff would kind of be pre-programmed into a lighting system like that. And that is not in there now, but that is something that we could add. One of the things that we talked about was a kitchen or a kitchenette. Lots of times spaces like this will have a kitchen or a kitchenette to serve it. It's one of those things that we talked about back in the programming stages. There's not a great place to put it. One of the spots that we talked about putting it is where you have concessions, and everybody decided you wanted to leave your concession stand pretty much the way it is, which is your ticketing booth, and that's up at the front. So we haven't added a kitchenette into that space. That's really the only place that you could put it, unless we were to take one of those small closets at the back of the room and kind of turn that into an alcove and put a little kitchenette in there. And that would really just be a small thing with a counter and a sink and some outlets where you could plug in a coffee pot. And we could even put it behind doors, and we've done that in some large spaces before. So you could make it available to folks when they're using the room after hours, or you could lock it off.
I think just a sink would be something that would be very helpful, both for the people in the concession stand to wash their own hands without having to go to the bathroom, that they may be using for a dispenser or something. And it's fairly close to the bathroom, so that the plumbing shouldn't be a huge amount.
I think you're probably right. If that's something that you want to do, we're out over that crawl space there. So it just means we need to manage how you're going to get the piping out there, but I'm sure we can figure that out.
Yep.
Phil, something we talked about a while back is a catering style kitchen. Is there any reason why you couldn't have a catering style kitchen and the concession all in one? Because if there was nothing, if there was an event going on and there was a caterer, you wouldn't need the concession. And if there was a play, you would use the concession and not need the use of the catering equipment?
Sure. It really just depends on how far you want to go. Now, we could make a little kitchenette in there that has some countertop space and some cabinets, and you could plug in a toaster oven, and that would take care of a small catering establishment that would be able to come in. But if a caterer wanted to come in and use an oven, or something like that, you're going to get into commercial kitchen, right?
Yeah,
And
no, we were talking more like
not enough money in the world
warmers
for that.
and just warmers and, obviously a sink and,
So, yeah, if you wanted to do something like a warming cabinet, that's just some space and electrical requirements, and that warming cabinet could kind of sit there. And if people don't use it, then it would sit there unused. It would take up a little bit of space in the concession area when it's not being used, but it's probably not the end of the world. I haven't seen you using the concession stand before, so I can't tell you whether or not it's going to take up too much room, but it all seems doable. To have a little kitchenette in there and have some space for a warming cabinet. And maybe an counter refrigerator for small things. And again, you could do a full-size refrigerator or a small one, like an apartment-size refrigerator, and that's again between that and the warming cabinet, and they take up a fair amount of room in there. But again, if you think you can live with that, we could certainly do that. And that's not a big change. That obviously doesn't show in the drawings now, but that is something that I think that we could get done between now and when the time we go to bid.
Okay.
And we could also, once the CM's on board, we could say to them, hey, what if we did XYZ in this room, and they could give you a rough number that, that's going to be 15 grand. That's going to be 20 grand. Is that okay? And then you could either say yay or nay. And I think that's probably going to depend on what the other part of the number is, whether or not you want to add that 20 grand or not. But that way we can get an answer from them pretty quickly, based on some conversations and sketches. And if you're happy with it, we can make the change.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
So
just some thoughts here. I mean, I would say if we did something from a catering kitchen, I think the idea there is that it would be able to support some relatively decent sized functions in there. So, something like an apartment sized refrigerator would probably be a little too small. In my mind, just something a little bit more robust. I don't know how that concession space works out that way. I'm just kind of looking at the print now, and
Well, if you put 200 people in there at tables like a banquet, there isn't enough room in your existing building to support a kitchen to do something like that. You'd really have to have a caterer come in and set up a tent outside with some portable gas-fired heating units in it and a truck plugged in somewhere in order to be able to accommodate that in that building.
No. And I think they do it all the time. So
no, they do it, and I'm just trying to compare it to the Lightkeeper's house there, and the great success that's been over at the Lightkeeper's house, and trying to. It's been a while since I've been in there, and maybe some people that are a little bit more familiar with that can weigh in on it. But I think they have a pretty decent sized kitchen with a real kitchen grade size sink to help manage the in and the out. But they're not actually cooking any product over there. All the product is coming in cooked. Could we even lose one of the larger bathrooms at the back of the auditorium space to incorporate that? I mean, there's 6 bathrooms there.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people in there.
No, understood. And then
if
I'm
we
just
need to
trying to
make plumbing
brainstorm anything behind the stage on that lower level. Is it feasible to do something like that? Is it?
Yeah, that is actually one of the things that we talked about when we talked about a kitchenette back in schematic design and kind of programming it. I don't think the folks that use that space as green rooms wanted to give that up.
There's one room there that's a storage room. I don't know if that's something that's even possible.
That's a new storage room at the back of the room. Those are new storage rooms that we created basically under what used to be your old balcony. That's what I was suggesting. You could put kind of a remote kitchen in there, and you could even close that off if you wanted to, a little kitchenette that would just serve that space. And that would basically be a sink and a place that you could plug in a coffee pot or something like that.
Yeah, and one other thought, I don't know if there was any way to incorporate that larger unused multi-purpose room in the basement of the new addition, knowing, I mean, obviously you'd have to go up and down a flight there, so the elevator would be integral to that component, and maybe that would change some doors, but just that as another space that is sort of underutilized from a
Your flex
programming
space.
standpoint.
Are you said your flex space?
The flex space, yes.
Yeah, I think if you, I don't really know it, but I mean, I'm not a caterer, but I bet if you brought a caterer in and said you could set up down here in this flex space and go up and down the stairs or use the elevator, or you could put a tent outside and park truck, I think they'd probably pick the latter. It'd just be easier for them to get in and out and move around inside the space.
It sounds like we need some on-site suggestions here to finish a few of these things. I mean, Phil, one of the things that concerns me is, since middle of summer, CPC has been asking us for a presentation of the historic side. They're the ones going to be funding the historic building. And they're very eager to. We have not been able to, we've given them a rough number, but we've never been able to give them a number. But more importantly, we really don't know what we're doing in there yet. And we want to make a presentation to them, tell them what we're doing, and have a ballpark. I'll put John on the spot because he's the one that answered the chairman of CPC and said we might have it ready in the middle of January. So we'd like to get something for CPC. We'd like to get something in front of them. Really like to be able to say, we're having the bathrooms here, the concession stand's going to have a sink. It's going to have wiring for a rack. It's going to have upgraded lighting, going to have acoustic. We need to be able to make a pretty good presentation. We got to talk about the windows, how we're going to restore those or replace them or whatever. And the flooring, we need to be able to have that pretty good presentation
Okay.
for them so that they can feel good about the money. And we need to know what direction they're willing to put up more than what's talked about. So we need to have a good number there, and if anything, a high number for what we're talking about for that historic part.
Okay. John probably suggested the middle of January. I'm guessing. Correct me if I'm wrong, John, because he's waiting
I'm right here.
he's waiting for the number from the CM, and the CM isn't necessarily going to go through that and pick out all the things. We could certainly ask him. I've never worked with a CM that would do that for you, but we could pick through the estimate, the line item cost estimate, and put together a number for what the restoration and preservation
My-
work really means. Sure.
Yeah, my thought too, Phil, is that, we could certainly ask them for some sort of breakout kind of going into this. And frankly, I was going to put a little bit to that in the RFP when I explain the estimate that we
great. Okay.
need them to do. But, things like the HVAC system, to me, that's, I'm going to use incorrect numbers, but if it's 20,000 square feet new addition, 10,000 square feet restoration, 1/3 of the, all of the MEPs is how I would kind of earmark that from the estimate. You know what I mean?
I agree.
You're not gonna count outlets and wire length and all that stuff. It's gonna be a square foot breakdown. Now for windows, it's gonna be restored windows versus new windows, or like I think some of it will be able to pick through, and I kind of alluded to that with them, that some of it would be a square foot. It's not an estimate for the resto and an estimate for the new. We're gonna have to massage our way through it. And at the end of the day, that's going to be our basis.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And basically, Phil, at any point after Friday, when we give you the set of documents, if we pick a date, we can put together a presentation. We can share a draft of that with you if you'd like to see it, and then we can make the presentation to the CPC folks.
That sounds great. I think I'm not sure that everybody in this board really feels comfortable with what we're doing with Old Town Hall yet. I mean, I don't think we've got enough information in front of us beyond
Sure.
what little we've talked about it. And we certainly don't have the finished drawings yet, but the drawings will show us a lot of that. But there's a real concern to make it really nice so that more, musicals or theaters or weddings or whatever have the ability to use it And so it needs to be, you know, in such a way that it, well, I mean, anything's gonna look better than what it has, but what it is now, but it really, we really have to, you know, make that worthwhile. That's gonna help us sell the whole project as well.
Sure.
But it is a part of the town that's, you know, 150 years old, so.
Still, shouldn't, work on the second floor, the offices and all that space and all that money that we're spending for that, that should also be part of the CPC money, because it always was offices. We're just modernizing it, and we're doing the details inside and outside, the outside windows and stuff that shine in.
And I think though that's always been part of the
Yeah.
CPC
Yes,
conversation.
yeah, it is.
It's
it
not
is.
just the auditorium.
Yeah.
We're
I
improving
didn't wanna get-
accessibility there and so
Yeah.
forth. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But
I just,
I think
we-
what Phil's saying is that if we can enhance and show the enhancements that we're making specifically to the auditorium space, because that's arguably the contentious part. That is a contentious part of the project because it's underutilized. So if we can show how we are enhancing that space so that it'll bring groups and functions into that space and want them to use it, that'll help us sell the project. It's the space on the second floor occupied for offices. That's an easy sell. You know, those people need an office, they need a home. It's the auditorium space that gets seldomly used so far. And if we can better that, and people can feel that there's value in us renovating this building, that's where I think, you know, energy needs to be focused. And that's why we're coming back to this catering kitchen thing now, because again, it's, you know, through this process, we've realized that the auditorium space is not good for meetings. It's not good for necessarily trainings. The acoustics in there are challenging. People don't want to perform in there that don't have to perform in there. So it's an important space that we get right at the end of the day. You know what? Even whatever outside of the box thinking we have to do there as well to do that, without blowing the budget completely, because again, it needs to bring value.
Yeah. Let's see what else I have. John, I have one other question for you. I think we touched on it with the CM. Are we gonna have interviews, and what's the process for that?
No, great question. So yes, given the fact that we have three, given the fact that, you know, this is one of the reasons that you like this format. You don't have to do interviews. It just requires a 2-phase proposal process, you know, basically a quals and then an RFP phase. The RFP phase is price and non-price, so pricing and then the technical. But the other piece is, you know, you can do interviews. The only rule from the AG is what you do for one, you have to do for all. So given the fact that we only have three, and this is going to be an integral, you know, relationship for the town, hell yeah, let's do interviews. So my thought is, you know, we would look to do, you know, the reality is we probably look to do the interviews. Michelle, let me stop for a second. Where do we know the town meeting date yet? For sure.
I'll have an idea tomorrow morning.
Okay. So Phil, my thought is that fingers crossed that the town meeting slides out to May, let's say May 1st or May 8th. If it's May 1st, the vote's going to be a week later, Michelle. So if the vote's on the 1st, if the
2 weeks later.
Okay, so at the earliest we're talking about is May 1st and May 15th. So May 15th to get a yes on the job. So that being said, Phil, I'm comfortable saying let's do interviews either the first week of January or the second. I'm working on the RFP tonight and tomorrow, and part of it is the schedule. So what I'll do is, you know, the big part of it's the schedule. I need to take all the edits I've made to this. I'm kind of transferring it to a Gantt chart, a project schedule with more specific durations and logic tying head to tail and all that. I would say knowing that now, we can do them. Let's wait for the RFP. We'll get them back. We'll do interviews first or second week of January and get started at that point. But I'm going to lay it all out, but I don't see a need to force any of this between Christmas and New Year's, because that's just, nobody wants that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So how do you suggest you set up the interviews? Do you do it with just
So I think
three
we still
people? Do you do the whole board, or how do you?
No, I think you do it with the selection committee, the folks that are in the prequal. I think it's fine. I think
Okay.
anybody can listen. I think at the end of the day, we should probably, pre-qual committee, we should probably talk about a selection committee. And again, I know we're short on numbers tonight. Probably worth, having another meeting before the holiday and selecting, solidifying who that is. Or you could just move to have the same people who are on the pre-qual committee be the selection committee and just take care of it now.
I mean, that's fine with me to have those three. That was myself, Mark, and Gert to do
I mean,
the.
anybody can listen. I mean, that's fine. It just means at the end, usually these things kind of all work themselves out. I mean, someone's going to rise to someone you're going to love at the interview. Someone's number is going to be best, and it's just a question of how you put that together along with the written.
Yeah.
An acknowledgement of who, some people's written plans are great because it gives you a kind of a look into what they're thinking. And then you realize that the people that wrote it aren't the same people you're interviewing, and there's a disconnect. So it's really, I put a lot of weight in the interviews because those are the people you're working with. Any one of these three firms can build this building, any one of them. I can say that pretty.
Yeah.
Pretty.
Is three a good number to do an interview? Is 7 people way too many? I mean, what do you see in these interviews? I mean, I think.
Oh gosh, I mean,
just listening to a presentation, basically, right? And then you
yeah,
huddle afterwards.
So basically, what you're going to have to do is then rank them and say, who did you like best?
Yeah.
Who'd you like second? Who'd you like third?
Yeah.
And that ranking is done and completed. Only then do I tell you what the financial issues were, and tell you what the numbers are, because the whole point of this is who's the best fit. And then the question is, how do the numbers work? In a perfect world, your first choice has the lowest number, but unlike GC, we have a little flexibility to be able to negotiate certain portions of the pricing proposal. So someone's, can't negotiate their fee. Like someone comes in and says, my fee is 2% on, I think the number we used on this is 14 million, excluding soft costs. So someone's going to come in and say, my fee is 2%. My fee is 3%. We can never change that percentage. However, we can negotiate their monthly fee for general conditions. And we have to do, what Steve and I will do kind of behind the scenes without letting you guys know is kind of normalize those. Someone may come in with the lowest monthly cost to run the job, but yet they've included a junior superintendent and a junior project manager. But wait a minute, that is going to be the lowest number because they're the most inexperienced people you can have.
Sure.
So, but if we really like their presentation, we can go, hey, you're light on this. You need to adjust your number. Similarly, we can have somebody who doesn't have a project executive who's got a lot of work, and suddenly they've goosed up their proposal with a man or woman for full time at a big rate. And we say, wait a minute, that's overkill for this job. You need to bring that number down. So we have that ability to work with them, but you shouldn't cloud your choice of who's best and qualified and done a great proposal by the numbers. We can always make the numbers work. We can get them back into the, a similar stratosphere. All these guys' numbers are close. All their rates are close. It's really, you're really going to be, it's not like the GC world where somebody's going to throw a number at this thing and they're doing it for zero profit and, cross their fingers and hope everything goes well. These are going to be 3 relatively competitively or similarly priced proposals when you see them.
And John, what, in terms of when do we make the actual decision? Is that before or after we see the price? So we go through the,
You go through the non-price proposal piece, non-price path, which is technical and interview.
Mhm.
And after that, then I'll tell you who'd you like. We'll rank them in your head. You know, I love Delbert. Delbert's number one. Hey guys, guess what? Delbert's number is the highest one. Okay, do you really still love them? Well, yeah, if they're the best fit, they're the best fit. So we talk about, okay, who's your first, who's your second, who's your third? You know, if you were tied and someone's then low, you're like, well, that helps break your tie. But you
Yep.
really are looking at this cost blind. This is truly about qualifications.
okay,
Cost obviously matters, and it's going to be close. And it's right at that same meeting, Mark. Like, we
Okay.
finished it, the interviews are done. We talk about it. Okay, then I'll put the numbers on the wall, and we'll have already gone through them and normalized them. And, you know, because as an example, someone may put 14-month construction duration, someone puts 16, someone puts 18. Well, we want to look at them all at what we think. Well, it's 16. So we bring the 18 down to 16, we bring the 14 up to 16, and try to look at them similarly paced. You know, there's a little gamesmanship that goes on, and our job is to try to weed through that to give you an apple to an apple to an apple as close as we can.
Cool. So Wayne, do you want to be part of the interview? Were you okay with the three of us doing it? What's your thoughts?
I'm wondering whether or not, if I acted as just an audience member, could I make comments after the interview is done and the person is gone and you're making a final decision type of thing, or, you know, just come up with ideas? Because I don't, I mean, I'd be more than happy to I'd almost like to be part of the thing, but if you get more than 3 people, are you getting too many people? I guess.
Listen, I'll be frank, on school projects, guys, you know, when we decide to do this and the building committee's 18 people already, we may have 10 of them who want to be on the committee. It's the requirements are, the have to is OPM, architect, owner, 4. 4 is the minimum. There is no maximum, really. There really isn't. I mean, you could do, Michelle.
I was just going to say, I would recommend that Wayne be on the committee, because if there are questions that arise, we don't have to wait to get an answer. There can be something that can be asked during the interview.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, Wayne.
So I'd like to do it. I mean, I want to.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
It's about a 4-hour commitment, you know, in person, you know, an hour a piece, including changeover time. And then it's, you know, some reading when the stuff comes in.
I like that.
And it's good. And frankly, the stuff that we got for the qualifications, that's the boring stuff. The good stuff is after they've looked at the drawings and they've developed a plan, and you're like, wow, you know, you're seeing pictures of your building in their presentation. You know, their staging, there could, you know, and we'll talk about questions and preparation for interviews and stuff a little bit later. I need to get the RFP out. I need it off my I need it off my laptop. And then we can give them the time and then meet and look, you know, an interview kind of after the holiday.
Sure. Gert, do you want to be on the interviews?
Yeah, happy to continue on in this process. Yeah.
Mark, I'm assuming you want to be on it.
love to.
Yep. So what we could do, maybe we send out an email and suggest the 4 of us. It'll be a quorum. We'll have to handle that at the time, but suggest the 4 of us of the committee to represent the committee for the interviews. I guess we can invite others at that point too, right? There's no reason why we can't. Okay, so that'll get us going. So we're set up for the interviews. That was my concern, make sure we had people identified. So we're good there.
So do we have to vote on that tonight?
If you want to do it, Phil, and get a poll via, get a vote via email. I mean, is that what you're suggesting? I mean, it would be good technically, the before the RFP goes out, the selection committee should be set. You know, there's no yes, it should be set. So whether you do it,
Yeah.
whether you do it tonight or you do it by email with a response, if you want to get Carolyn's thoughts or Tucker's, you know, that's, again, this thing will probably not go out until my target is the end of the day, Thursday. Get it out this week, but I need tomorrow, need some time for feedback with, you know, kind of a few of you just to bounce it off, some things off of you. And then, you know, then it will go out.
Okay. Michelle, can we do that by email? Can we?
Sure, I'll pull the committee.
Okay. That's something you can handle?
Sure.
Awesome. Great. I just want to bounce back. Phil, I did have another question. We were talking about the interior of the old auditorium. Is it possible to do, we did a flyover the exterior of the old town hall and the new addition for presentation last May. Can we do something similar for the interior of the old town hall so that we can help sell that with like CPC and other people that look at it?
Sure. I'll need a little bit more time to model that. We have portions of the interior of the building modeled, but we don't have that room modeled. So we'll have to do that. That is also going to mean, though, that I'll need to kind of commit to some things, like what color the paint's going to be on the walls and the ceiling and stuff like that. And it may be better to leave that a little bit more vague, because there's a couple of different things you could do. My guess is that room was probably polychrome when it was first built. And I think maybe the outside of the building might have had a little polychrome color as well, rather than all white the way it is now. And so there could have been 3 or 4 to 5 different colors inside that room. We won't know that until we start doing some of the demolition and cutting and patching and seeing some of the old paint revealed here and there. But
So I think the intent here was to take a model here and sort of be able to get it to, I don't know, one of these companies that could do basically a 3D staging of the space, you know, different schemes of, call it, different events in there, and sort of take that, so that'll help be a selling feature for us, you know, to communicate that to folks outside of our committee and utilize that.
sure.
That's
Well,
am I right, Phil Lear? If that's the,
Yeah, that was long term. I mean, we wanted to get something that we could see showing. I mean, it's going to look very different with the bathrooms in there, right? I mean, that whole wall is going to come in. The
Right.
acoustic ceiling is going to change things. Those fixtures are going to be significantly different. I'm assuming there's going to be a modern looking rack up there for the lights. The floor is going to be redone, and you know, it's going to have the stage is going to be recessed some. The addition of the stage is going to be taken off, I believe. So that's going to look very different, and something, you know, a walkthrough or whatever visual would show that kind of thing. Beyond that, we were looking at what would it look like with 20 tables set up for a wedding reception. And if they did a walkthrough and actually saw how those tables fit in that room, how where a speaker would be located, how the bathrooms kind of block off and funnel up the front doors so that you don't have that big vestibule with the 2 doors anymore. I mean, would have a whole different feel to it. And I think drawings are one thing, and a visual like the flyover we did exterior would be very helpful.
Phil, who are we looking for acceptance of that, though? You know, we're talking about 2 different things. And so if you're talking about tables and chairs, is it something that the town owns and has to find storage for? Is it something that would be catered? Like, I agree, trying to give a visual to folks so they can see what it can be.
Yep.
But who are we waiting for to say yes? And I gotta believe we'll get 50 different thoughts of what it should be. And then who makes that decision? So it's
Decision of what?
of how to use that room. Like, are we talking about are we trying to show them potential uses beyond what we're doing for scope? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's like.
Absolutely. And I think,
Yes.
you know, scope, all we're doing is really cleaning up the interior of that space.
Okay, no, that's
That's our job, right?
okay.
Now, you know,
So it's,
beyond
it's,
that,
it's
and to
to
show
help sell
that,
it, basically.
yeah, yeah. And to show that visual is going to look much different than it looks now, just as a shell. But if it's possible to go one step further, I know there are companies that do the visual that actually, you know, put weddings inside you know, a room and walk around and show how the function actually works. Put in 100 chairs or 60 chairs, whatever, and show how that works. And it's going to be different than what it was before. And I think significantly different. The entrance going into the town hall is going to be a little bit different. You know, certainly the new town hall and the entrance from the front is going to be quite a bit different. But I don't know. I mean, clearly, you know, you got plenty of time. You got till the middle of January, Phil.
I think if you do these,
I haven't seen you laugh like that. That's pretty good. Phil O'Brien's not smiling, or he's barely smiling.
I don't know. I don't know how, you know, long that takes, but you know, we've been looking at this, you know, our concern with the town hall building committee is the old structure. We haven't really had a lot to look at. We've been asked what the windows are going to be looking like, the doors are going to be looking like, we're going to insulate it and, you know, things like that, you know, replace the floors, and we really haven't had the answer for it. So we're kind of really kind of anxious to get to CPC. I'm not saying that we need that interior for that, but it would certainly be something very useful for the town hall presentation in May.
I think it's the present condition is what CPC is going to be more interested in, and then they say that this sort of glimpses of what it'll look like, but I don't know if we want to get into something that, you know, that thing we're trying to make you know, we want to turn it into something that's very ritzy or it's going to cost you a lot of money, or it's going to things like that. I don't want to, you know, do people want to have receptions and things there?
Well, I mean, it's like, again, I think it's just having that vision, right? It's you know, there's a lot of weddings that the Red Lion puts on. You know, there's only so many spaces in Cohasset to have like a rehearsal dinner. So utilizing this space for that, you know, setting it up as the auditorium space, and just, you know, for a play function, and whatever schemes we can come up with, just so that there's a variety of purposes that this room can be used for.
Well, what if you, you know, talk to Lisa Pratt or somebody and say, will you show me pictures of some of the performances you've done? You know, My Fair Lady, this one, of the cast and of things like that. That brings it to life and makes it, you know.
Yeah, but I think what we're trying to do is take it a step further, you know, even show it with, like, you know, the indoor, like the possibility of an indoor farmers market and what that could look like. Because I think people are, you know, they can't, a lot of people can't vision that kind of thing, you know, showing how the church next door used that space for their event. And, you know, it's just like, visually, it's not about the color and the decor. I mean, basically, you'd be bringing that in. That would be event specific, but it gives people that, oh wow, you can do that kind of thing there.
Why don't we go down to the Historical Society and then look in their archives and see
I want to look forward, not backward, though.
There's 400 men outside the front of the town hall with their wagons and stuff. I mean, that, you know.
I think that's, you know, we talked about that with Tucker. He's talking about doing a presentation to show what was there before, something like a storyboard or on our website. So that's something we'll be talking about more, but we're talking about what the space is actually going to look like when it's completed. It's going to be a hard thing to visualize just on plans for some people. I think interior animated view of it would be helpful. I don't have anything else. Is there anything else anybody wants to bring up or talk about?
One thing I just want to inquire to, and that is, what kind of access are we going to have to the attic? And at one point, they said, you can't put a stairway, you can't do this, you can't do that. Is there something like a heavy-duty pull-down staircase that can be put in if nothing else can get put in? And the reason for this is there's going to be a whole sprinkler system up there. There's going to be all new wiring up there and some other things. And it just seems crazy to have a ladder that has to go into a 2x2 hatch and try to have any workmen or anything go up there. So that's my question.
Trying to
What do you
look
have?
that up for you. Trying to look that up for you right now.
Great, thank you. There might be the possibility you don't have anything.
Well, looking for my my drawings. I'm not. I'm disconnected from my server because I can't really be connected to my server and be on a Zoom meeting at the same time. So
You want me to share my screen,
What does it show, Mark?
the drawings?
Yeah, I mean, does it have a way to the attic?
Well, I can share the screen. That's,
Sure.
I don't see,
yeah, I don't have it on my. I don't have the full set of documents on my machine here, and so I can't.
is that
I
coming
can't
up?
show that.
Can you see the drawings?
Can we enlarge it?
We can see that, Mark.
Okay, all right.
So there's a mezzanine area. Basically, there's an attic space that you have. That is kind of over the human resource. I'm sorry, over the kind of TV control studio and
Yeah, but how do you get up there? Because these stairs come down.
right.
At one time, you did have an access stair up there. I'm not seeing it now, though.
Correct.
Yeah,
It
we
used
have-
to be,
We have a, I think the access to that space right there is basically a mechanical space, and so there's a ladder up there, and the ladder is in the custodian's closet. I don't think that has changed. So there is a hatch up through the,
Oh, there it is, right there. It says ladder in the lower
yeah,
corner.
and the current plan has, there's a, the current plan show the mezzanine. One more plan down, I think, shows the mezzanine. There you go. It looks like something's missing on there. The ladder again shows, but the hatch doesn't show, and the ladder itself doesn't show, but that's where we're coming up in there. And then we have a similar situation with a ladder and a hatch where that rectangle below the word mechanical is shown that gets you up into the larger attic above.
Okay,
But it's not a full down stair.
it is just a horrible way to have to go up there and carry something up there. And even for the contractors to be working up there, lugging up the fire, suppression stuff and all that stuff.
No, agreed. And I don't think they'll get anything up there through there. I think what they'll end up doing is cutting a temporary hole and lifting it up through there and then patching it up again. There's a fair amount of work they need to do up there. And so they'll leave it open until they get everything up there that they need done. So you're right, it's maintenance in how you were going to use it. I don't think constructability is going to be an issue. They'll find a way around that. But ease of access for you all getting up and down into that space is the trickier part.
And make
It's
it a
just
bigger
hard for
hatch.
me to- It's hard, pardon?
You could potentially make it a larger hatch, like, you know, your larger roof hatches.
Sure, we could do a larger hatch. So I'll put that on my list. It won't show up on the plans for Friday, but but
Even if it doesn't have to be you know, with being for maintenance only, it doesn't have to be 4 feet wide and 8-inch treads or whatever it happens to be. But if there's some way of, not a spiral staircase, but a, you know, a short staircase somewhere,
Sure.
with a hatch or something on top, it just,
You mean like a ship's ladder?
yeah, something like that is good. Or like you suggested, maybe a larger opening, but maybe put one of those aluminum covers that you do on the exterior that you could open up and have much more room to get up there. Or a set of like a ship's ladder or a library ladder that is coming down at the right
more
angle.
of an angle, just a little easier to use. Sure.
Okay. It's like a
Take a look at
teeny
that.
is going to help a lot even while the work's going on. You know, so tradesmen can go up and down quickly. Okay, I'm happy.
Just some additional thoughts here, and I'll put the drawing back up on the screen. Is there any option to utilize any space underneath the stage for chairs and table storage, possibly on a sliding system that slides out in here to unload them and then back in? I don't know if that's something that's conceivable.
I don't think that there's actually any space in there because of the green room space down below is actually
Okay.
up half a level.
Yep.
It's tucked up underneath the stage.
Okay.
Lots of times in a space like this, you'll have kind of a floor frame and then the stage is built on top of that, and there's some interstitial space. You don't really have that here.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Just thought I'd ask. And then, you know, if we're trying to brainstorm ideas for like a catering kitchen, you know, and if we need all the bathrooms for the occupancy counts, that's fine. Obviously the storage here is very helpful. Is there even the thought or the option here to even encroach on the auditorium space even further to try and grab some square footage? That'd be helpful for that function, for that need.
I think we're kind of maxed out there because we're coming out right to the edge of that overhanging space now. And
Can we
if we get out
go
any
past
further
the
than that,
overhanging space and go all the way up and essentially make the room smaller?
yeah, then we're gonna get into all that decorative plaster up there around the perimeter of the ceiling, and we'll have to kind of recreate that. I don't know that I don't think structural is gonna like it, and I think it's gonna be really expensive and not really give you a lot of benefit. Now,
you
if you
lose some
wanted
seating.
to, the exit door number 7 over there, EX7, you know, that's not going to be labeled as an exit, and it's really just left there for kind of historic purposes. We could close that door and extend the size of the concessions room.
That sounds like a great idea if it's allowable.
Well, I mean, you tell me. It's going to mean that kind of historic concessions space is going to have to be demolished, and we'll have to build something new. And I recall with all the glass windows in there, people kind of like that space, and that's one of the reasons we didn't really mess with it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe what we could do here is we could kind of look at give you guys a chance to take a look at this on your own time and brainstorm, maybe throw a couple of options together on what's conceivable there. You know, things like that exit door. If there's any bit of that concession space that could, any of that material that could even be reused so that, you know, maybe if the layout is just modified there, maybe if something came across here to make it bigger, or I don't
Yeah,
know.
basically, you just balance what we're doing over at the stair, right? Just, you'd have a
Yeah,
wall.
something
there,
of
another
that
door.
nature, you know, if there's a way to reuse some of these materials here so that people don't get the sense that it's all new and there's some historic relevance to it. Even though it's a new layout, it's a new item.
Sure, it's basically, there's a lot of wood in the construction and we could leave it, but I really can't build new things out of wood in this. Well, maybe I can.
Is
Yeah,
there,
all right, I'll take a look.
if,
There's a little bit of flexibility because we're sprinkling this building. One of the things that we learned for you all, yeah, I thought it was good news and I'll share it with you. You know, we have an old fire curtain there on the proscenium arch at the stage that we have to abate because it's full of asbestos, as you would imagine. But we just got confirmation from our code consultant that we do not need to replace it. So that's good. Because that was going to be expensive. It wasn't in the last cost estimate. So we don't need one.
okay,
And what is that? What is that? It's
I didn't hear what you said.
A fire curtain is basically in an emergency, when the sprinklers went off or when the smoke alarms went off, the fire curtain right behind the proscenium arch on the front of the stage basically would come down, and it would create a fire barrier between the stage and the rest of the auditorium. This assumes that
Okay.
if you had something going on backstage that might light on fire, that would come down and it would allow the people that are in the auditorium to escape.
And that's a function that we currently have.
No, it doesn't work. It's basically an old asbestos blanket
Awesome.
with a fusible link on it. If it ever came down, everybody in there would be a lot worse off than they would if there was a fire. And I don't think it works. It's basically degraded to the point where nobody really
Yeah.
wants to touch it.
So does that get removed? What do you do with it?
Yes, it's going to be removed as part of the hazardous materials abatement. Yep.
Okay. So,
That's
but
ended up-
now, being sprinkler, does that cover?
We don't need a new one. The code was updated about 10 years ago, so that unless the ceiling height inside your stage is higher than 50 feet, and you know, that would be like a big
The-
old venue. You don't need one.
Okay, good. That is good news.
That is
Thank you
good
for
news.
explaining it.
And then speaking of the stage here, I think that, you know, we get a good idea of, and we're not looking to add fancy light fixtures or anything. I would think it's just sort of bringing the power to make sure it's up there and in the vicinity, so that if a group or a body wants to add, you know, some fancy $15,000 light fixture, they can do so and connect it without ripping into walls.
Yeah, that's the plan.
You know, and
right now-
understanding what we have for, you know, a light bar, manual, motorized, something that could come down so that lights can be bolted and go back
Mark.
up.
Mark, did you get a chance to look at those shots I sent you?
I did. I can pull it up again here.
I got them right here. Let me,
Okay,
here, just if you stop sharing for a second.
I'm gonna find the little.
So just real quick, I had sent, Mark and I. So let's do this. So here's bear with me a second. So as an example, this is the Seth Ventris building in Marshfield. This was an old, you know, just an old second floor of their old, this building was a town hall, it was a police station, it was 1895, it's been a bunch of stuff. But to the point about the lights, these are modern light fixtures that are new. You know, they weren't terribly expensive, but it gives a feel to the space. Nothing was done in this space besides refinishing wood and painting. You know, and then the wainscoting you see on the side here actually was higher up the walls, but it was a mess and the plaster was bad. So they took the wainscoting, they shipped it off site, they remilled it, you know, and then basically took it from other parts of the building and were able to, you know, reuse and get it to a 4-foot height. But again, pretty simple, but good bang for the buck. But The stage is what I'm talking about here. If you look, this is the extent of the stage lighting. These 3 fixtures that could be pointed, can be pointed in a, pointed down at something there. So again, just one example of an old space. And then this is one Steve worked on. This is Upton Town Hall, which is crazy in that you can see the stage over here. And you can see there was this nice sitting area up on the 2nd floor. And yes, that is a full court gym basketball court that ran through the middle of this hall. And they were adamant that that basketball court needed to stay there because it was one of the single largest use gyms in the town of Upton. So kind of cool to get multiple crazy uses in the same space. But again, I look at this stage as well. Simple lighting. So to the point of, I think the Mark or Phil's question earlier, like these aren't theatrical light bars and stuff. So if you're talking about going that way, it's added cost. It's kind of a question of how much is this project doing versus what is the next project? If it's a space people don't like and the acoustics aren't that great, we're going to try to make them better, but this isn't the auditorium at the high school, nor should it be. It's who's making that decision so that we can make sure that we set them up for success, but maybe don't outfit the heck out of a space more than we should. That's all.
Sure.
Just a couple of.
But we do need to take that in account, and we'll include the head of the drama club there, Lisa Pratt. We'll want to hear from her, and Tucker's already done some interviewing there, so we'll get some feedback, and we'll want to make sure it's reasonable, to your point. Anything else?
So you're going to do a poll, Phil, about the selection committee for the CM?
Yes. Yeah, Michelle's going to send something out for us.
Awesome.
Yep. We'll have something there. Motion to adjourn, I guess, if we're good.
Second.
We're good. Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Right.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.